This chain actually isn't that bad. Probably a good hand filing would do this one just fine. It looks like I've already hit it with a hand file a couple of times. So I'm trying to figure out why it's in the box. Let me just kind of slide it through. Maybe I can figure out what's going on. Because usually when they're that good, I go back to hand file. But for whatever reason, this one didn't make the hand filing. Okay, let me look it over. Last time I did this, I got into a chain that had multiple issues, which is why it made the box. Rakers are already taken down, so I'm beginning to wonder why. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch it just a little bit, and we'll run this chain and see whether or not we do better than the last chain. Yeah, this looks to be pretty good actually. I may have to hit the raker some, but not as much as I did the last one. I'll put it up on the saw. I'm going to do one more so I have two of these. But I'm going to start just using these chains for the firewood. But also if I'm doing like a cookie cut race, I'll use one of these chains and just use it across all the different saws. So I'm not wasting new chains, new gear on fun and games. That's where I'm going with all this. Firewood, fun and games, stuff like that. Well, here's another one that's been filed down quite a bit. And looks to me like it's really not that bad. There's more life in this chain. What happened probably is I used it to do a day or so, and when it started cutting not the way I liked, I just threw it off and put another one on. But it looks like I also hit this one with the file a couple of times. So let me just throw it on the grinder and see if we can tune it up just a little bit. Yeah, one thing I can tell you is this is a whole lot easier on your wrists if I can make it work. I'm angling for a little more gullet to see if that'll help a little bit on this. So I went a little deeper this time. And I don't know. You see, this one's been filed on before, so those rakers may not be that bad. It's about, yeah, see, those rakers are already took down. Just touched the top plate, but dig out a little bit of the gullet was all I really did this time with this chain. So let's go try them, Let's go run these things. Well, the point of all this is, what have we gained in the last 40 years? More than that. That's like a mid-1970s into the 1980s Homelite. 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 2020. So that's a 40-year-old saw. That right there is the cylinder design. So to all those people out there who say, well, to get RPMs, you got to have a lot of transfer cross-sectional area. Look at the amount of transfer cross-sectional area this thing has. Now the timing on this saw is to where it runs, I don't know, flat out at about 10,000 RPMs. It's designed to run quite a bit lower RPMs than a new saw for sure. The no load on a new 80cc saw is going to be in the 13,000 RPM range, where this one here is about 10. You know what I'm saying? But also a new saw, like a 585, is going to have a cylinder sort of like this. This is off a 575, but the 585 has the same basic layout, where it has those long transfers and stuff like that. Strato for emissions, all that stuff. And that's an 81cc saw. We'll run that in just a couple of minutes. Its layout is like this. Two big transfers up the side, kind of short, decent cross-sectional area. This is off of a 268, but the basic layout's the same as the 288s and the 281s. Just to show you the different designs. Of course, I'm skipping the 385 and 372 era. We all have seen those forever. But I figured kind of a review. Very common, that kind of open port layout. And the Swedish saws kind of revolutionized that closed port concept, like that one right there. And again, the Swedish two-stroke designers are yet again moving things along in a different direction than the rest of the world. The strato ports and all that. But interesting. So let's take that 585 right there, go back and hit some of the same wood. Not that one, because I can't keep it stable, but maybe that one. And let's see how much difference there is in speed between a 40-year-old two-stroke that actually doesn't weigh that much more. At least it doesn't feel that way. And this new fancy high revving, very, very smooth, by the way, 585. Well, one thing right off the bat that you see different between a new saw like that and the old one is the vibration level. That 585 is smooth. That old homie, man, that thing will beat you up of the vibrations. Fuel usage, you would suspect that would be different. Ergonomics, right? Chain brake, that one doesn't have one, so it's user beware. That doesn't have an automatic oiler, that has a pump. You got to operate by hand. Now that old Homelite right there has cut a lot of wood. It's a little tired. And, you know, chrome bore and open ports, but it's got a reed valve. And that was actually a fairly sophisticated design, a case reed type design. And it makes good power, it really does. It doesn't rev out, but it makes good solid power. Now I can mitigate some of the loss in chain speed by upsizing the sprocket, right? You can get away with a little larger diameter sprocket to get a little more chain speed back. But you can work with that saw, no doubt. And that is an oldie but goldie. I've had that thing forever. And this saw here, I worked it, what, 2 years ago? I put a fair amount of time on it, and it's a good work saw. Again, this is a, you know, mid to late 80s design. It derived from the 181 series. Now Bob's going to go and talk about things like, you know, like my old L77 where the oil and the fuel is in the same case, right? So it doesn't really have the anti-vibe, and also their chances of boiling the fuel a little bit higher if that case gets hot. And then they separated out the gas tank. Husky did that. They really revolutionized that saw concept back in the late 70s when they came out with that series of saws with the anti-vibe and a separate tank handle concept. And I've got that old 61 that's a 1978 that has that same layout, which really is not a lot different than those saws back there, the blue one and the 585. Basically separating the fuel away from the hot stuff. Bar oil, doesn't matter, you know, it warms up and flows a little easier. Now, this one has an automatic oiler, so it's a significant increase in just ease of use. You don't have to keep thinking about pumping that little thumb thing right there. And this one has a chain brake too, so this is probably a mid-80s. That 181, 281 to 288 series, Homelite was still selling those things, you know? So it's really not a surprise that Homelite had a tough time, because they had to put money into making those things, those die castings. And when this style saw came out, yeah, they might have been pricey at their time, but they were certainly less complex from a motor perspective without the reed valve, so the cost could be lower. No way that Homelite could ever have competed with these, both performance and cost. They tried. They had like the 410s, and then they had the 540s and stuff like that, but they were really pretty much done once the Huskies came out. Steel, you know, they kind of were heavy and a little slow at first too, but they came around. But Husky, in my mind, was way ahead of his time with piston port engines. I used to think John Thread was the company that did that, but after a few years of research, I realized it was Husqvarna. They really did that piston port thing, vertical cylinder, that layout. The A77 and the precursors were that same basic layout, you know, and that's a good running saw. So what I want to do, just a brief overview, like I said, make this kind of light. And you can see the different cylinder designs. The reason I brought this one out is because I just found it interesting. It's almost teasing one of my friends, in that this was the least of the desired 70cc to 75cc saw options that Husky did in a very long time. That 575 just did not do well. But that cylinder design, I mean, they run good. You know, this is the 570, this one right here. But you see that same basic layout show up on these new saws, the 592 and the 585. So that basic long cast-in transfer is back with us. Of course, you've seen the quad port 372s and 385s and stuff like that. So like I said, we're skipping a generation. That's, you know, the 395 is kind of like a halfway step to the 372, 390 style cylinder. We'll get into that someday. They're not, in my mind, truly a quad port. They're kind of like a same one of these that just got a divider. You know, it's a little goofy, but what they were looking for is better scavenging, and they got it. They run good. And of course, there's a 572. So what I want to do is just put some time on that Homelite, just do some blocking with it, some noodling with it. Basically, let it sing its song. Let's go run that old homie until it runs out of gas. What do you think? Either run it out of gas or blow it up one. It was showing a little lean. I think its seals are specious at best at this point. My God, how many years has that thing been running for me? I don't know. I'm going to say somewhere past 30 years. I guess one of the questions that needs to be asked, though, is like this new stuff we're having. You think they're going to be around 40 years from now? And especially with the auto tunes, as much as I like them, the internal parts, you think that's going to last for 40 years? I don't think so. But I wouldn't be surprised if that carbureted 585 does. I believe that saw, that's going to be like a legacy saw, kind of like these homies are. What I mean by that is, assuming we're still burning gas in the future for chainsaw work, and that's a big assumption, because right now there's an awful lot of people trying to get rid of gas-powered everything. But on the assumption that gas-powered chainsaws will still exist, I'm going to bet that 585 is around. And I bet it lasts longer than the 572 and a lot of the other saws. It's a pretty heavy built saw. I got to wear sunglasses because I had eye surgery. Been struggling with that a little bit. But let me see if I can just go out there and find something to block with the old Homelite. It's funny, I had run pull-ins as a kid in the 70s doing pulpwood with a bow blade. And I hadn't seen a bow blade in years and years and years. And then I had, I don't know, one of the small Homelites to do a little tree work here and there when I was a kid. And then I got these 925s at a farm auction and ran them for a bunch of years. Came out here and it's like, thank God I had them, because I cut a lot of wood in the beginning with these, and then I got into the 372s and all that kind of stuff. Let's see if this will fire up.